And Richard from NAFTA. Great. Are you going to be comfy?
Richard, what happened? Football injury. That is a great way to hurt yourself. All right, welcome everybody. We don't have too much time today and we have 4 amazing panelists here, so I'm just gonna get into it. I'll give some quick intros and then we'll get started. So we have 4 founders here who are working in and around the topic of AI autonomous agents. We have Martin Koperman, who's the founder of Gnosis, as well as a bunch of really interesting projects, including Circles UBI. We have David Minaj, who's the founder of Valerie and a founding member of OLAS. He's working in particular on enabling co-owned AI. We've got Richard Blythman, who's the founder of Naphtha AI, who are working on a coordination layer for decentralized AI services. And we have Nick Naraki, who's the co-founder of HATS Protocol, which is a programmable graph for roles and agents in any organization. So we're going to be talking about AI agents and in particular how they relate to DAOs. And just to kick us off, David, I wonder if you could share a definition of an AI agent as you see it.
Sure. So an agent is something that observes something in an environment, has some internals, and then ultimately takes action in the environment. Like we are agents, right? And then an autonomous AI agent is basically such a thing, but as software. So the internals can be arbitrarily complex, right? We today basically are talking about software architectures which use probably some large language models and other type of AI models under the hood, plus some contraptions on top. And then they might be, calling into various APIs to observe things and to do things. Maybe one important distinction, Richard also shares that with me, is often when we talk about AI agents today in the space, there's this kind of confusion about workflows versus agents. So like I would say it's very important when we talk about autonomous AI agent that we really mean like a thing which has agency and does something on it on behalf of someone, which could be another agent, human or software, for a long period of time, rather than just a workflow like a ChatGPT with like a rack on top or something.
Yeah, that's awesome, thank you. AI agents have been very much in vogue over the last 6 months. In particular, folks in crypto have kind of glommed onto the concept and got excited about it. I'm curious what role these types of agents might have to play in DAOs and relating to the crypto space. Nick and Martin, you guys both work with decentralized orgs. Would love to hear your guys' thoughts on that intersection.
Yeah, if I had given the answer, I would have gone much further and would say it's a new form of life. And we are we are doing very early experiments, so it's not necessarily the main thing of Gnosis, but yeah, we are exploring those agents with a couple of projects, and yeah, Olas was one of the first ones. So very related to this first talk from Trent, where he said predicting is intelligence. We created agents, or we wanted to see if agents are able to predict real-world events. So asking them essentially any question about what's going on in the world, and see if they have enough intelligence, essentially, to figure that out. And that is what we are doing right now with a couple of projects. And I think the answer is very clearly yes, they are able to do that, but the consequences of that are, well, in my view, are quite big, but maybe I first let others speak as well.
Yeah, I would say I definitely want to go down the life rabbit hole, a new form of life rabbit hole, if we have time. I think that I've been fascinated with teams and jazz bands and collectives and collective intelligence. And what interests me about DAOs is that it's pushing forward the edge of collective intelligence. And I think that AI agents that are sitting in a DAO and helping that DAO to coordinate and cohese and express itself that is a new form of life, and it's also going to be much more productive and efficient and potentially profitable than other forms of organizations that have ever existed. And so we need to think deeply about how we steward these things.
Yeah, that's well said. I do want to get into those elements. I do want to get into the more sci-fi ideas here around new forms of life. I think one thing that would be interesting just to do a bit more context setting is how are these agents actually being implemented right now? Like, how does this actually work? Richard, would love to start with you. You're building a coordination layer here for agent systems and multi-agent systems. I wonder if you could touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So there's a bunch of frameworks. People have probably they've heard about LangChain before. There's also like Baby AGI, Microsoft AutoGen, all of these. That's what people usually implement agents in at the moment. But I would say that, you know, most of what we see at the moment is like one human interacting with one agent. And we don't really have the substrate for, you know, many agents to interact with each other. Baby AGI, for example, they call it a multi-agent system, but actually they all use the same LLM. And even the creator of Baby AGI came out recently and said, it's not a true multi-agent system. It's more like a complex agent with many modes, or, you know, an agent that puts on different hats, right? So that's what we're trying to build, is like a framework, like a decentralized version of LangChain or Baby AGI, which allows you to have, you know, these different agents running on different nodes with different LLMs, different code bases, different data, and all interacting over the network somewhere. So, yeah.
Cool. David, I feel like you two would have a bit more to say there as well.
Do you want to go first? Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think it already exists. Well, that's do multi-agent systems, but I would push back quickly also on this, it already being beings. I think we need to be careful, like they're not life forms yet. Like the reality is actually quite trivial still. That doesn't mean we shouldn't, you know, worry about what the consequences could be potentially. But I think one key thing with agents, which is super exciting, is from our perspective, is like if you have a single agent, ultimately it is unlikely that we will find a single agent doing everything, for I think the same reason that we don't find that in the world either. Like, there's a couple of things, like firstly, it's quite complex to be good at everything, quite literally, but also like when I'm doing one thing, I can't do the other thing, right? And that also holds for software things. And so multi-agent systems and like economies of agent is like a natural, I think, starting point actually, because that's what we see works with humans, and I don't think there's any like principal economic argument why that shouldn't be the exact same thing with autonomous software systems.
Yeah, to answer the question and also to respond. So how are they working right now? So we started, like for example, on those prediction agents, still in a quite constrained way. They were basically where there was still a clear, say, a loop. Do first this step, then do that step, and then do that step. That's how we started. But we are already pushing the boundaries where that does no longer exist, where the agent basically just has a bunch of functions it can do. It has its own balance, it has resources, it knows what those functions cost, and that's essentially all the input it has. And then we started off and saying, go do something interesting, or go make some money, or go and survive. And I mean, again, that is experimental, but those agents were already able to, kind of to create a plan, or to say, okay, I will do this step first, and then that step, and then that step. And then we went even a step further and say, okay, now this agent can reflect on their previous, kind of order of actions and try to synthesize a strategy from that. Then it can, and then we went another step further and said, okay, now it has the ability to spawn a new agent and seed it with that initial strategy. And now kind of that can develop in an independent direction or can develop in a specific direction. The initial agent can go further, and I would say I'm really convinced that this is very close to being a new form of life.
I love that. I'm just like nodding, like this is so cool. I think actually if we can stick with this for a little bit, one of the ways that maybe this can feel a little bit more real is if we talk about some of the use cases here. You've been working on prediction markets, Martin. I wonder if you could touch on the how and the why and why that's interesting.
I mean, yeah, okay. I mean, well, we wanted to see how good agents are already, and it was pretty clear that, or I think eventually they can do all kind of things. Short-term information aggregation or collecting information is clearly something that works already today. But just say, okay, write a research report is tricky because, well, then they write the research report, but you don't really have a way to measure the quality of that, well, knowledge artifact. While if you let them trade in a prediction market, you have a very concrete way to measure which agent is performing good and which one is not performing good, because you can simply see which one makes money or not. So that was a very, I mean, now, so again, we are in, to us it's more research or early experiments, but of course, any prediction that, any agent that is capable of producing actual predictions is also, well, economically viable, and Trent gave a couple of examples for that in the first talk.
Yeah, and can you talk about why that could be interesting actually, like for the world, like not necessarily what's happening right now, but if this starts to become a highly liquid product, what does this enable for us?
Well, okay, I mean, I can go into this vision of prediction markets and just say that if the world would have better information about all possible futures and how all the possible futures relate to each other and how kind of that event makes that event more likely, well, then you just have a better understanding of what's going on or what is going to go on in the world. And then, of course, you have also a better chance to do actions today that then result in the outcome that you want. So I guess that's the positive vision. But yeah, I'm definitely one of the, I belong to the ones that just think those tools will create power. And yeah, I think there's a good chance that this power can also be used against us.
I think it's really interesting as a starting use case because you basically are building a sort of reputation for these agents and their ability to make money and trade. And if you can prove that out and that model works, then I think we'll start to see similar types of reputation systems for all different types of skills and for AI agents and not. But I love what you're doing because of that. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, so related to that point is potentially the idea of governance and agents that can play roles in governance. David, you've been building the Governator agent. Would love for you to touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, so obviously we just had your presentation, and in that presentation, basically there's this concept of the DAO, and then there's the agents, some humans, some software agents who can participate, if I got the gist of it correct. That's one way to think about using autonomous AI agents in the context of governance, like you basically outsource tasks to these agents. Another is you could even turn the entire DAO into an agent, right? Agent system where effectively you could say, okay, is that a smart contract? I would say no. Actually, if you go into the specifics there, smart contract always requires something else on top to actually be proactive. So coming back to Governator, we kind of still in this former camp in a bit, where in a sense where basically we were saying, okay, well, if you take this exact example you gave with voting, like who actually wants to vote all the time, you tend to delegate to a human, right? If you delegate to a human, then that person